Let's go ahead and hook into the user interface. So the UTARM gives you the setup wizard, and it's going to march you step by step, setting up all the inputs and all the controls. So go ahead and hit next. So the first choice it's going to give you, do you want to have sequential control or simultaneous control of the elbow and the hand? In this case, you can see it's clicked on sequential, so it runs through the algorithm that I've just talked about. Raise the elbow, hold steady, it locks, switches control to the hand, co-contraction unlocks, switches control to the elbow. Our other choice is simultaneous elbow and hand, so we can actually run the elbow and the hand at the same time. But that requires two inputs. If we were trying to run both the elbow and the hand off of the same input, you would flex the elbow and the hand would be opening at the same time. You got to have different inputs. So that could be our patient that's had targeted muscle reinnervation. So you have 4 electrode inputs. We could run it off of a linear potentiometer with dual channel EMG for the terminal device. We saw a bunch of harnesses set up that way yesterday. Nice option. We can even run it in sequential control with 2 separate inputs. So the patient's using the harness to flex and extend the elbow, but then dual channel EMG, the elbow has to lock, then it switches to dual channel EMG for the hand. Okay? This is the first step. Let's go ahead and we'll stick with this selection that we have sequential elbow and hand. Let's go to next. Now it's going to ask us what inputs we want. Our choices are triad preamp, so those are the gray ones that we've been using, or an alternate input, same as with the iOS. Can be either a linear pot or touchpads. Or we could use the old UTARM Blue preamps that we were using with the MyoLabs yesterday. We'd strongly recommend against that. We actually don't even make them anymore just because they're so susceptible to interference. We're going to push them more toward the triads. And you don't have to use our triads. You can use Autobox electrodes, Touch Bionics electrodes, whoever you want to use, and you would choose the filtered electrode. How many inputs? And we've been doing all this in the iOS. It's just this is the old MS-DOS version. Choice of dual channel or single channel. We can choose separately, do we want the elbow to be in differential versus first over, or do we want the hand to be in differential or first over? So you can make all those choices separately. Remember, if I'm working with a new patient, I'm almost always going to set it to first over because they're going to have a lot of that crossed off. Let's go ahead and go to next. Next thing it's going to ask, are you using an electric wrist? The arm is smart enough. It goes out and looks and sees if it has a wrist there. And so it's giving you that choice, yes or no. If there wasn't a wrist there, it would be grayed out and you wouldn't be able to see it and you wouldn't be able to turn it on because there's nothing there. Remember our new patient, we don't want to frustrate them. We want to make it as easy as we can. So let's just turn the wrist off for now, and then we'll talk about it later. So now all our other choices gray out, so you can't make those adjustments. Let's go ahead and go next, after we wait. So now it gives you a little scorecard as to how we're set up. We're in sequential control with the same inputs, differential elbow, differential hand using triad filtered electrodes. The wrist motor is turned off. The other thing it's done is gone out and looked at what type of terminal device is out here. So that's how you can use just about anybody's terminal device on a UTARM. You can use a Tasca hand, you can use an Autobox speed sensor hand, you can use a V-Bionic hand, whatever you want. They'll all work with the exception of a Michelangelo. Let's go ahead and go next. Now we can start going into each individual device and start making the other adjustments that we've done. Now, our new patient, again, we want a positive experience. We don't want them frustrated. One of the easiest things to do on the UTARM is to make the elbow go up and down. And again, remember I said let's turn off the wrist in the transradial system so that they don't end up with that frustration of getting into the wrist and then have to figure out how to get back out. So let's go into the elbow menu first. I want to make them so they can run the elbow, and it's a lot of fun. We'll go through this menu. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, system parameters. You'll very, very seldom ever go in there. Just so happened yesterday we had to go in there for some troubleshooting we were doing, but don't worry about that. Setup wizard right above that, that takes us back to where we started. So if we wanted to change it, say from sequential control to simultaneous control, down in the bottom left-hand corner, quit program. It's how you leave the program. I strongly recommend you leave the program through quit program. That makes sure all the settings you've made get saved in the elbow. Right above that is the hand menu. That takes us to the menu to adjust the terminal device. Let's click on user choices and see what all's in there. And not a whole lot. Elbow polarity. So that's if your electrodes get wired up backwards, you can just switch the polarity there. I would strongly recommend in the case of elbows, go ahead and switch the electrodes, electrode wires. Because when you switch the polarity there, it switches the polarity of these two gain pots too. And so things can get really confusing if you call up for tech help. So always make sure A is the anterior, B is the back. And that'll help you out in the long run. Let's go ahead and go to user feedback options. And this is where you can turn beeps on or off. And it's very seldom that you're ever going to change these. And one time that you will want to change these, and probably the best thing would be to give us a call. But if you go from coapt to conventional myoelectric control, coapt goes in and changes a whole bunch of settings in here that are really off the wall. And so the elbow just doesn't function. Give us a call, we'll send you the default program, you can take it back to default, and then you're at a good starting spot again. And one of the things it does is it turns off the beep when it locks and unlocks, which the patient, really helps the patient. Let's leave this screen. And the low battery indicators don't work anymore. They were designed for NiCad batteries, and now with lithium ion, they just don't work. The lock unlock, you'll never use that, don't worry about that. Let's go ahead and leave this screen. We're back to the main menu screen. Let's go to look and set. And now we're getting into the meat of the program. Same things we've been adjusting. You see at the top, channel A, channel B. At the bottom, the far right ones are the thresholds. So anything below the threshold, the elbow doesn't move. Next to her, the gains are volume control. If they don't have enough strength in their signal to make the elbow move, you raise the gain, turn up the volume. Other key points of the screen, quick, medium, and smooth. Same as with our terminal devices. In the Utah arm with new patients, you'll start to use this quite a bit. A new patient will bring it up to hold steady, and they won't be able to hold it steady enough. Switch that to smooth, and that'll help them out. Also notice it gives you a little scorecard at the bottom. Is the elbow unlocked? Is it in brake mode, or is the pin engaged? So if I raise it up, I hold it, you see the brake engages. That's that silent brake that can lock in an infinite number of positions. Unfortunately, that'll only hold about 5 to 10 pounds of weight. So let's say the patient wants to pick up a 20-pound bag of groceries. They pick up something heavy, so if I overload the brake, the elbow can determine, oh, you're going to exceed that, and you heard that pin engage. Okay? Now it'll support up to 50 pounds. So now you could, 100-pound bag of concrete you could carry with 2 hands. Let's go to the next one, lock, unlock, just below that. So now notice what we have here. We've got switch rates. We've been talking about switch rates with hand wrist switching. Exact same thing here. The first two, clear to the right threshold, that just lets you see the signal so that you know how much signal the patient's getting. Now if I crack, you see you get the green borders around the graphs. That lets the patient know they hit the right signal to get it to be an unlocked signal. But if let's go ahead and raise it up, I'll let the elbow lock. But you can see those green borders are a nice learning tool for your patient. I was doing something that a lot of patients will do bad just now, is I was trying to co-contract before I relaxed. And you see it's got that little relaxed light. So now if I'm relaxed, I give it the co-contraction, both those borders flash, and the elbow unlocks. But if I try to unlock before that relaxed light goes off, I can hit those signals, but it won't go. I gotta relax. Now it'll unlock. And patients will do that to you. They'll be trying to unlock and they'll go boom, 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 and they never relax enough to cycle it so that it can see the full algorithm. Relax, co-contract, relax again. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you see where it says lock time. That's the amount of time I have to hold it steady for the elbow to lock. It's an adjustable period of time. So if I bring it up, it's set for 1.2 seconds now. Hold it up, 1 Mississippi, and it locks. Okay. You want that to be long enough. You don't want it too long because you don't want them sitting there. When's it going to lock? New patients are also going to struggle because they can't hold it steady that long. So you may want it a little bit shorter. The problem is you get it down too short. You get it down much lower than 3/4 of a second. They hit the unlock and then it immediately locks again. And so the elbow has to start moving or else it'll lock again because it's being held steady. Okay. Usually right around a second is a good amount of time. Then below that is switch window. Again, that's the amount of time that the computer gives it to see both of those switch rates hit their target. In this case, has to be within 1/10 of a second. Very seldom will you ever adjust that. Don't worry too much about it. I can count on one hand the number of times in my career that I've adjusted switch window. Again, down in the bottom left-hand corner, tells you what state the elbow's in. See the brake come on, the pin lock will show, ring borders, I unlock. Let's go ahead and go to free swing relax. So these two adjustments, the seconds until relax, this is the relax timer. Again, less than one hand if I ever adjusted the relax timer here. But the one next to it you may want to adjust. This is the free swing level. So remember I talked about powered free swing, that when I relax, it drives into extension. And so this is the point where as soon as it drops below that point, it's a threshold, drops below that point, powered free swing will kick in. Okay? So I relax, relax, and then the elbow slowly goes into extension. So here's a really nice feature of the Utah arm, is I only need, say, biceps to flex the elbow, and then gravity extends. So it's a really nice way to do single site control for elbow flexion extension. I only need one muscle. So now my patient, my brand new patient, they've lost their arm, their whole family's there, it's a traumatic time of their life. I want them to be able to run this elbow. And it's really, really easy. Okay, can you fire your front muscle? Bam, the elbow flexes. Okay, now relax, and it drops away. And everybody gets excited. They're like, I can see my life again. But I don't want them to lock right away. I want them to be able to operate the elbow and just not worry about unlock. Because remember, co-contraction is one of the hardest things to learn, as you guys just learned. Let's go back to lock and unlock. So I want them to just be able to run the elbow and not have to worry about unlocking for a while, or locking, I should say. Don't have to worry about locking for a while. So before my patient comes in, I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn up the lock time. And I'm going to turn it up to like 2 seconds. And so for the first 10 or 15 minutes while I'm working with my patient, that way they can just be running the elbow and having a lot of fun. And get a nice positive experience to start with. Then I can turn it back down to, say, a second. And so that now they bring it up, hold it, the elbow's locked. Now I'm going to leave. Let's go to the hand. Because now we've switched control of the hand. Let's work with that for a bit. So let's go to the main menu. We can go to the hand menu. And there's actually 2 microprocessors in the elbow. One processor operates the elbow, the other processor operates the hand and the wrist. So there's 2 computers in here. We'll go through this screen exactly like the elbow screen we just looked at. System parameters in the bottom right-hand corner, setup wizard, that takes us clear back to the beginning again. Quit program if we're done. Elbow menu takes us right back to where we were. Let's look at user choices in this screen. And we have several more adjustments. We can set hand polarity. Typically, you're going to want flexion to close the hand, extension to open the hand. There are those patients that like it the opposite way. Here's where you would change it. So in this case, I've got flexion open and extension closes. We can also adjust it on the wrist. So we can, and remember, the Utah arm uses standard wrist, so it's just a motor direct device. It doesn't have any electronics. But remember, when we make wrists, we don't make left and right wrists. So you're going to have to set that polarity on your transradial system. Usually you want wrist extension to supinate, wrist flexion to pronate. Same thing with the elbows. Extension will usually, flexion will usually supinate, extension will usually pronate. Auto-cal, don't worry about that anymore. That doesn't work with these systems, the way things have changed. Wrist control enabled. This is just another place. Remember in this setup wizard, we turned the wrist off. This is just another place you can turn it back on. Switch between hand and wrist, you'll never use that. Let's go to user feedback options. And again, a place where you can start turning beepers and buzzers off, on or off. So yeah, this is where you just turn those on and off. Let's go ahead and leave the screen. And we can leave this screen. And now let's go to look and set. And again, looks exactly like the elbow menu. Thresholds, gains, quick, medium, and smooth. So I can make all of those adjustments right here. Simple and easy, easy peasy. Go ahead and hit print EMG down there at the bottom. And this takes you to a graph that you can shoot a shot of to send to your funding institution, whatever you need to do. Go ahead and X out of that. So that's pretty much how you set the easy settings. Let's go back to the main menu. And let's go back to the setup wizard. So let's go through the setup wizard again. Now let's say we want to set it up in simultaneous control. So we have a patient that we want to run elbow with linear potentiometer and the terminal device dual channel EMG. So yep, you went ahead and switched it to simultaneous. Notice it grayed out that bottom section. So you can't choose between one or two. You have to have two inputs. And so that's why I had Nate get me this, it's a little pistol grip with a linear potentiometer. So I can operate the linear pot with this hand. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I've got dual channel EMG plugged into the elbow, but I actually want dual channel EMG to run the hand. So instead of having it in the elbow, I'm going to plug that into the hand, and then we're going to plug elbow control into the elbow. Makes sense, right? Okay, let's go ahead and go next. And so simultaneous elbow and hand. The first thing it's asking, select the elbow input. And so what are we using for the elbow? Yep, linear transducer if we're using Autobox. Alternate input. How many do we have? Do we have dual channel or single channel? Single. Yep. Let's switch that to single. Go ahead and go next. Now it's asking for the hand control input. What are we using? Triads. Yep. So that's correct. Dual channel or single channel? We've got two, so it's dual channel. Differential or first over. So now we're getting the user up into a little higher level of function. He's been using an arm for a while. He's got good differential signal. So we'll leave him on differential. Remember that the disadvantage of first over, every time you want to switch direction of the hand, you've got to completely relax. So differential is a little bit more responsive. Let's go ahead and go to next. We'll leave the wrist off for now. We'll come back and turn that on here in a second. Let's go ahead and go next. And it gives us the our little scorecard. Tells us that the hand is still attached. This is going to say one of three things. In-hand controller, terminal attached. That means it's just reading a processor in the device. The other option is we still make motor direct devices that are less expensive. They don't have quite as many features as the Pro Plus devices, but like I say, they are less expensive. Or it might say terminal device, no terminal device attached or turned off. So that's a good troubleshooting. Then my TDE isn't working. Go through the setup wizard, and it might tell you that you just have it turned off, and you got to figure out how to turn it on. Let's go ahead and go next. Setup wizard complete. So now let's run it. So now Nate's going to pull on the linear potentiometer. The elbow's running. At the same time, I can open and close the terminal device. Okay. So somebody that's really good could actually position the elbow at the same time they're opening the terminal device, and it speeds that process up. Also, an important distinction to make when you L-code out a electric elbow system, you have two different L-codes, one for sequential control, a different one for simultaneous control. So make sure you know what you're billing for and what the patient's potential is, so that you're using the correct code. Let's go ahead and go to elbow menu. Okay, so now we're going to the elbow. We were heading to the elbow menu. We're at the elbow menu. Let's go ahead and go to look and set. And things are going to look a little bit different because we're in single site control. Instead of having an A and a B channel, now we have an input gain and an output gain. And we still also have a threshold. So the threshold still, if you pull just a little bit on the linear potentiometer, it doesn't do anything until it gets over that threshold. But once it gets over, then it starts to move. Input gain, the input and the output gain actually act much the same. So if you increase either one of those, it's going to make it more sensitive. If you decrease them, less sensitive. So if they're having trouble giving a signal, raise the gain. If they're having trouble controlling it, lower the gain. The times that you will adjust them separately is, let's say you're using one electrode for elbow flexion, and they just can't generate enough signal. Raise the input gain because it needs to have enough sensitivity to see that muscle signal. Otherwise, don't worry too much about it. If they're struggling with the linear potentiometer, just raise the gains a little bit. Let's go to lock, unlock. One thing we didn't talk about in the previous, when we were going through sequential, is that little button says lock override. That's actually another one of those artifacts from years and years ago. Just leave that off, don't mess with that. But a new one appeared that says flex extend after braking, and flex extend after braking is a feature. Let's go ahead and unlock. Okay, he raises it up. Go ahead and raise it. The elbow locks, but he can still move the elbow a little bit. Okay, so he's still moving it around. Now let go quick, and now the elbow's really locked. So flex extend after braking is a very high level function. Patient comes up to an object, the elbow locks, but they don't quite have it targeted exactly where they want. They can adjust just a little bit, then completely relaxed, and then the elbow is completely locked. We're going to change that to where that's off. And so now go ahead and click that off. Let's see if you can unlock. So he unlocks, go ahead and bring it up. Now it locks. Now he doesn't have to worry about that movement at the end. Go ahead and give it a quick pull, and that unlocks. So instead of a co-contraction, just a real quick pull of the linear potentiometer. Again, you have a target rate, so that the higher it is, the more difficult it is. The lower it is, the easier it is. Let's go ahead and go to the main menu. And now we want to go back to the setup wizard because we want to turn the wrist on. And now you can go directly to the item you want to change. And so we want to turn the wrist on now. So go ahead and click on where it says wrist motor turned off. And instead of going through all those other steps that we know are already okay, Now we can go straight to the wrist, turn it on. So now we have the wrist turned on. It ungraded that box, and so now we have two choices: A version control or B version control. We were real creative when we came up with these. A version toggles the EMG signal between the wrist and the hand. So it toggles that proportional EMG signal between the two. B version is if we just have a simple switch. So think a rocker switch. So if I push on one side of the rocker switch, the wrist is going to supinate. Push on the other side of the rocker switch, it's going to pronate. Very simple switching. That would be commonly used in, say, a shoulder dysartic. I could put a little rocker switch right here on for a chin switch to pronate and supinate the wrist. But we'll start out with A version. It's a little bit more tricky. So we got it set. Let's go ahead and go next. And everything's copacetic again. Let's go ahead and go next. And let's go next. Oh, actually, let's go to the hand menu. Notice all of these menus say hand. The hand and the wrist are controlled by the same process. Let's go to look and set. And I don't know if you remember, but there's a few more adjustments now on the left side of the screen. And also down at the bottom, we have choices between the hand is selected or the wrist is selected. Again, the thresholds and the gains are the same as we've seen. Let's go ahead and click on switch control. Things look the same again. We've got choices between fast access or co-contraction. Fast access is set now. So if I give it a real quick contraction, I switch to the wrist. We could do some gain adjustments, make it a lot easier for me. Now I also have the choice in this case, I can use co-contraction to switch between the hand and the wrist. So go ahead and hit it, bam, it switches. Actually, there is a little bit of a bug here. You can actually have both of them on, so you have to turn fast access back off. Now it's co-contraction on the wrist, co-contract again. And I'm back to terminal device, okay? And again, that little scorecard at the bottom, the patient can tell where they're at. So they can know if they hit that correct signal to switch to the hand, or switch to the wrist or back to the hand. If they're in fast access, they know which mode they're in, okay? One more adjustment on this page. Go ahead and go to the relax timer. Throw over to the left, there you go. And this is the same relax timer we were adjusting in the iOS. Let's go back to hand settings. Let's say we do want to make an adjustment. Go ahead and hover the mouse over the plus and minus at the bottom. Click on it. Okay, now you can use the page up, page down, and it'll move in 10-point increments. Or you can use left and right mouse click, and it'll go in single-point increments. And when I'm adjusting one of these on a patient, I'm going to do page up, page down. I'm going to make big adjustments. And then I might fine tune within it. Another adjustment you can make, go ahead and see where it says save recall. Let's go ahead and click that. And this is where we can save it into onto your laptop. So again, your patient's there, you've made all these adjustments, save it on your laptop. Now if you need to get a loaner arm because theirs is broken, your loaner arm comes, you can upload all those settings. Let's say then it gets broken, we can't save the settings off of it. You've got them saved when their arm comes back. You don't have to go through this. Go ahead and hit proceed. Now go ahead and make a change. Go ahead and change like the A gain. Make some big changes there. Okay, now let's go to the main menu. And the program's smart enough, it knows, hey, you made some changes, and the arm's going to behave as if you made those changes, but do you really want to save them? And the default is it saves them for you. So if you just hit the default setting, it's going to save them, and then you're going to go on to the next screen. Or the next one down is proceed without saving. You almost always want to save it, unless you did something and things are really messed up. Well, let's go back. We can proceed without saving them, and then go back and redo it again. So go ahead and hit save. We're in the main menu. Let's go back to the setup wizard. We'll do one more scenario. And go ahead and go next. Now we're going to switch it to back to sequential controls. We're going to run elbow, wrist, and hand off of the same input. So let's go through, since we're going to change everything, let's just go through the setup wizard. So when you're doing sequential control with a single input, you always plug into the elbow. And the way I remember is when you turn it on, it always starts out in the elbow. So you plug it into the input that it starts out in. Here's one that tricks everybody up, including me. When you go from simultaneous control to sequential control, the default is use separate inputs. So that's assuming you have two inputs still. So you have to change it back to where it says same inputs. What type of inputs are we using? Perfect. On dual. Yeah, we can keep it on differential control. We'll keep it on aversion control. Let's go ahead and go next. And let's go next again. So now my elbow, I'm still running it the same way I did when we had sequential control before. Bring it up, hold steady, switches to the terminal device. Now I'm in terminal device. Let's go to the hand menu. Because now some way I got to switch from hand to wrist still. Let's go ahead and go to look and set. And same screen, still looks the same. Let's go ahead and go to switch control. And again, we have this choice of fast access or co-contract for hand wrist switching. Co-contract's pretty easy to teach people. Let's go ahead and hit co-contract and we can use that for hand wrist switching. But it says you can't. Not available in this configuration. That's because we're using co-contraction for elbow unlock. You can't use the same trigger for more than one thing. And you can really get in trouble when you have, say, a wrist rotator with a multi-articulating hand. You can't use co-contraction for both hand wrist switching and a trigger in the hand because it just doesn't know which co-contraction it wants to listen to. And what's probably going to happen is it's going to switch the wrist because the wrist is going to see it before it makes it to the hand. So in this configuration, we can't use co-contraction. Now we could in the previous one because we had two separate inputs, okay? Now we only have one, so it doesn't know which one, it's only looking at the same one. Let's go ahead and go to fast access. That we can do. So in this configuration, we can use co-contraction for elbow unlock, fast access for hand wrist switching. So let's say the patient can learn co-contraction for elbow unlock, but they struggle with fast access. So now I'm in wrist. I can bump a switch. Now I'm in terminal device, okay? So I can easily mount a switch, say on the inside of the humeral section, bam, I hit the switch. I'm in wrist, bam, I hit it, and I'm back into hand. Now you may want to raise the target rates so that they don't accidentally switch, because it's still reading a fast access signal. So it will switch if it sees the right signal. You can turn those up to 100, and so they never can hit that, and it's only going to work by the switch. One other feature, and we had this in the Transradial System 2, auto switch to hand on, so that's auto switch back. So if they co-contract, they're in wrist, after, and it's set default at 10. It's not adjustable in this user interface. A rocker. Let's go back to the setup wizard. Mike, can you get back to the setup wizard? So let's go to the summary screen, because we're going to go right to the wrist and we're going to make a change there. And where it says wrist, let's go right to it. And let's switch it to B version control. So this is if you want to use pattern recognition with the UTARM, you order a special upgrade. We do some electronic. We do several things. One of which is we hijack two of the lines running through the elbow so that you can get direct grip control of multi-articulating hands, specifically the task at hand. We've got to run two more lines through, and so we steal B version switching. And that's why B version switching won't work in this elbow. Questions, comments?